Hi, Charles Sizemore, Chief Investment Strategist at the Freeport Society. And today, my guest needs absolutely no introduction. He is a co founder of our beloved Freeport Society. He is one of the original quantitative investors, and he has a track record that spans pretty close to half a century at this point. Louis Navellier. Welcome, Louis.
It's good to be here.
Now, I have to sing your praises a little bit before we get started because this is very relevant to what we're going to talk about. Back in 2016, you recommended a certain stock that it's a company I had heard of because my kids were into video games, but it wasn't exactly on anyone's radar. That company, of course, has grown to become the largest company in the world by market cap, with a market cap of $4 trillion. I'm, of course, talking about NVIDIA. You recommended that back in 2016 when it was the domain of gamer nerds and pretty much nobody else. Just before we get any further, like what alerted you to that stock? How did you find it?
Well, the main thing is we have something called an alpha, which is a return uncorrelated to the market. And alpha divided by the stock standard deviation is our top secret quant ratio. And we think we do our alphas better than everybody else because we correlate them against different indices, and the one with the highest correlation we pick. So most people don't do that. Most people just pick an index, and that's that. And so we do our alphas a lot better than most people, and we've been testing it for many years, and they continue to be spectacular. But in recent years, the fundamental factors we also overlay are doing even better. And this is somewhere where NVIDIA would shine. We rank stocks on sales growth, margin expansion, earnings stability, earnings momentum, cash flow, analyst earnings revisions, earnings surprises, and analyst revisions. So the stocks that score the highest on those 8 criteria are truly extraordinary. So when we can mirror these two worlds, the fundamental world with the quantitative world, you find very few stocks, and obviously NVIDIA is one of our stars, and we still hold it.
Very good, very good. Now, of course, NVIDIA did not become the company that it is today because they made really good gaming chips. They became the company they are today, of course, because their chips provide the fundamental necessary hardware for the AI boom. Now, what you've been telling your readers is that this first stage of the AI boom is, I would say, kind of mature at this point. It's not over, but it's mature. And these leaders of that first wave of AI innovation are fairly established. And what you've said is that we're about to come up on a second phase here. And that second phase is going to launch here towards the end of this month. July 22nd is the specific date you gave. And this ties back to a specific executive order by President Trump. I want to get this right. It's Executive Order 14179. So for those of us not immersed in the nuances of executive orders, what's going on here?
Well, you see what he's doing right now with copper. Copper prices are 50% today because he's demanding U.S. copper sources. So, I do recommend a Peruvian copper company, BVN. And it will still sell us a lot of copper, but he wants to onshore the U.S. copper supply. But the big one is he wants to onshore U.S. rare earth minerals. And we have a company in Idaho that mines those metals with gold and some other things they mine or keep them going. And we are talking today about all the rare earth companies that we expect to prosper from Trump's executive order. But this man wants to onshore a lot. He's getting it. And he's not messing around with the tariffs. I think probably the most shocking thing I saw is, Vietnam had a 20% tariff, which wasn't surprising. But if there were goods in Vietnam from China that were sub-assembled Vietnam, it was a 40% tariff. So we expect he'll do that to Mexico too, because the trade deficits with Vietnam and Mexico exploded mostly due to Chinese sub-assembly. And so he doesn't want that to happen. And you can see GM's already diverting its Mexican production back to the United States. So we're gonna be in the midst of this onshoring boom. It's real, and we'll be exporting a lot of obviously energy and agriculture products. He guilts all these countries to buy something American, and if you buy enough American, you won't have any reciprocal tariffs like Britain or Australia. But if you have erected your own trade barriers and you're not buying enough U.S. stuff, he's going to hit you pretty hard. And of course, the other big negotiations will be Japan and South Korea. Japan has an election on the 20th, so this little testy when they do it. But he wants them to have 25% tariffs by the end of the month. Of course, they have big factories in America and they can onshore. So we'll see what happens there. He might give them a quota to sell so much otherwise this tariff, otherwise it's going to go up. And that's what he did with Britain. Britain can export 100,000 vehicles to America a year at 10% tariff.
I think we know how this story goes because we saw it. We saw it back in April. The tariff letters they're a warning shot. They're a call to attention to get to the table and negotiate. I wouldn't necessarily take the absolute rates seriously because as we've seen over the last couple months, it's flexible. I also do question whether some of these country-specific tariffs are going to end up holding up in court once this gets settled. By the end of this month, it's entirely possible that some of these will be tossed out. But when it comes to national security-related tariffs, which is where some of these commodity tariffs come into place, that is a different story. So my understanding of the law is that some of these tariffs on goods that are just sort of arbitrarily, set by the president based on the direction of the wind or whatever, that's probably illegal. But the president does have broad discretion to set tariffs based on critical materials needed for national defense, for example. And rare earths absolutely fall within that. I made the joke that the trade war basically ended. It was all over but the shouting on, I believe it was April 4th, because that was the day that China said, oh, tariffs? Okay, great. Yeah. Well, no rare earths for you. We're just going to completely restrict all exports of rare earths. Yes. At that point, China and the U.S. could have done this game where they jacked up tariff rates on each other to infinity, and that could have gone on for a while. I think both countries would have allowed that to run a bit longer. But when rare earths were taken out of the equation, now we have to talk. So,
I will mention one thing because magnets are a big deal, and rare earths go into all the EVs as well as the data centers. But Stellantis right now is looking at a $3 billion fine because they didn't make enough EVs in Europe last year because the EU mandates a certain proportion, and of course by 2035 they have to be all EVs. And they've allowed them. They haven't fined them right away. I guess they're going to allow them to catch up. Well, Stellantis can't make EVs that compete with China, so they're not going to make them. So
nobody can. China has really, particularly BYD, they have made. They've really done a fantastic job of creating really economical.
They're cheaper. They're the iron phosphate batteries that don't catch on fire, and I was out in the West Coast, and Morro Bay, not Morro Bay, Moss Landing burned up. That's Monterey area. It burned for a month. So they had this toxic smoke go everywhere. They had the wrong kind of batteries in their energy storage. And now the soil is all contaminated. So if you get strawberries or artichokes from there, who knows what will happen to you. So this is like an East Palestine.
We may get superhero powers, Louis. Like we may all become Captain America. That may be the superhero serum.
I never thought of that. I never thought if we glow, that might be good for us. I do know JD Vance drinks the Diet Mountain Dew, so he might glow faster than some of us because he drinks that green
He may
stuff.
also turn into the Hulk someday, though. He may have that one last Mountain Dew that just puts him over the edge and literally turns him into the Incredible Hulk.
There you go. But when you hit that red button in the White House, it's only Diet Coke, it's not Mountain Dew. So
one of the funnier anecdotes I heard about Trump was that his staff at all of his restaurants, they know what to do. Like they have a protocol for when the boss comes to visit. They have to immediately, within 30 seconds of him sitting down, a waiter will be there with a tray with 2 Diet Cokes, one cold, one room temperature, and ice. And depending on his mood that day, he'll either take the cold one or the room temperature one. But like that is their boss protocol. When the owner's there, they know what to do.
Yeah, well,
That cracks me up.
I've been to Mar-a-Lago quite a few times, so it's always amusing to watch what goes on. But, I don't think Trump is messing around. I think we'll have freer trade when all's said and done. But I do think, there's going to be massive onshoring. I was disappointed when Chancellor Merz was at the White House. I'm sure Trump was guilting him to move more of their manufacturing to America, because I know he's already said, I'll give your workers visas just to move all your production to America. And obviously, they all have auto plants in the South, and obviously, there are huge incentives if they continue to divert manufacturing here. But why we didn't hear from Merz is that was the day that Elon and him were having a hissy fit. So it was all about Elon. And I'd really like to hear what the plan is for Germany, because even Volkswagen, who has succeeded in selling EVs, they sell more EVs than Tesla now in Europe. And their profits drop 40% because they can't make the margin on the EVs. So they do on a car with an engine. So I think, because we don't have the net zero rules, because we don't have the 2035 zero emission rules, I think the entire auto industry has to, from Europe, has to move to America. Simple as that.
That's interesting, particularly for their gasoline-powered cars. There won't be a market for them back in their home countries. So I think you actually touched on something that I haven't really heard anybody else explain it like that.
Well, the EU is going to have to do something, because they are a bureaucracy they are no longer just a monetary trade union. They are a big political machine that interferes with Marie Le Pen in France. They mess with one of Meloni's associates. They mess with the guy that won the straw poll in the first runoff in the Romanian presidential elections. They've been messing with Polish media, although the conservative guy got elected in Poland. They've always been messing and finding Viktor Orban. They're the ones that have opened up all the borders, and it's and obviously places like Germany are having problems. So is France. So and Britain. Britain has horrific problems. You go to Britain and you start to asking, where are all the Brits? So it's. I
lived in London about 20 years ago, and it was funny. I remember I could go days and never see an Englishman.
Well, back then they basically sold all their real estate to Egyptians and other wealthy Arab guys, and you could live in Britain and pay no taxes as long as you
non-dom residency. I remember.
So they attracted all that capital, and so they were no different than Switzerland, or I think where Switzerland you negotiate your deal. But it's gotten to be very, very interesting. And
well, Louis, let's circle this back a little bit. You actually brought up a point that I thought was interesting. You mentioned moving workers and whatnot. So, of course, one of the hallmarks of this administration is a sharp, not just halt in immigration, but actually a reversal. So where that ties into AI, and what I think is interesting, is there was already a labor shortage anyway, right? At least in several fields. When you do essentially, scare away a lot of the immigrant labor, you make that shortage worse. Well, what's the expression? Necessity is the mother of invention. That is going to massively accelerate the need to replace human labor with AI, with robotics, with whatnot. One of the launches I'm really looking forward to, and I have modest expectations. I don't think the first iteration is going to be like a life-changing tech. I think the real life-changing tech is going to be 3 or 4 iterations down. But Tesla's Optimus robot, imagine if that lives up to its hype, every family in America will own 1 or 2. You'll have one in the house doing all of your domestic functions, cooking, doing laundry, whatnot. You'll have one out in the yard mowing the grass, pulling weeds, whatever. You'll have it doing all the grunt work you don't want to do. Need to change a tire, forget jacking up the car. The robot will just pick up the car for you, and then the second robot will change the tire. It's the first generation is not going to do that. Like, I have very modest expectations, but at the rate things are going,
right now there must be bartenders. I know.
Do I know?
Well, we need Elon to do another Universal Studios thing like he did with the Robotaxi to show the future. Because Elon is a visionary, but when he does those Hollywood production things, I think he has more credibility and people will be more patient with him. Obviously, he's been a little bit erratic lately, but the robots are coming. They're going to be standing still a lot too because they'll be uploading from the data centers.
Sure.
So, but AI is interesting. The tech firms continue to lay off people, and the stocks continue to go up. I was at my son's Stanford graduation recently. It was the MBA school, but obviously there's a lot of foreigners at the big colleges, and I also saw the same thing at my daughter's Columbia graduation. She was grad school there too, and but there's a lot more. Stanford's a much bigger programming campus. Half the undergrads are computer science, and so I think we'll still get all those qualified workers on visas and things. You can go to Redmond, Washington, and you'll notice that it's India. It's because Microsoft's headquartered there, and Microsoft loves to hire Indian programmers. The shortage got so bad at one time when Mr. Balmer was running Microsoft. He threatened to move it to Canada just to get more workers. So I think we'll get all those kind of workers, and we'll still have I think Trump just wants you to have a green card. He hires foreigners at his resorts, the seasonal resorts. You cannot bring in seasonal workers, and you don't have to pay them Medicare taxes or Social Security and that stuff. And so that's how
you also don't have to pay a robot Medicare or Social Security taxes.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. I never thought of that. What a way to save Social Security with robots. Okay, well, there you go.
We have solved all the world's problems.
Yeah. But we do need Elon to do another Universal Studios production. So we know what the robots can do other than serve drink and appetizers. And drive a, they had the one where he drove the Uber. And
I was at my father-in-law's ranch a week or two ago. And I remember I was watching three men trying to pick up these really heavy bales of hay and load them onto a cart. And I remember thinking, my back hurts just watching that. That just looks absolutely miserable. Well, how long until there's an Optimus robot doing that? Even here in Peru, where I am right now, which is, of course, a country without the labor constraints the U.S. has. Even here, I promise you, that will be the reality probably by the end of the decade.
That'll be awesome. We're all looking forward to it. By the way, I neglected to mention that at Mar-a-Lago, there is a robot dog patrolling the grounds.
That's a little bit scary because I've seen Black Mirror, and there's the Black Mirror episode where the robot dog goes rogue and starts killing people. So that maybe I'll take that under advisement. Anyway, let's circle back real quick. I want to talk about your presentation on July 22nd. You're going to be going into a lot of detail on the executive order, what it means. The focus is of course going to be on raw materials that are going to fuel this next stage of the boom, and a lot of it's going to be rare earths. What else can you tell us before we go?
That Trump is very serious about the onshoring. China did open up its rare earth minerals to the United States, but a lot of people still think they're playing games and being very restrictive, and we just don't trust them. So he wants to onshore everything because he doesn't trust a lot of countries.
And what kind of arrangement how did it ever get to the point where the critical materials we need for national defense are in the hands of our single biggest geopolitical rival? China, as of today, China has a virtual 100% monopoly on heavy rare earths, and they have roughly a 70% market share of all rare earths, which it's a wider net. That was never a smart move. How did we ever get to that point? I don't know, but this was realizing something that was
Well,
not sustainable.
there's nothing wrong with outsourcing as long as they don't play games with us. So apparently Russia will play games with its energy.
What was it,
Uh,
Lenin? The Vladimir Lenin, the father of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. What was it he said that a capitalist will sell you the rope you use to hang them?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about depending on China for our rare earths. It's
Correct.
yeah,
And
we're
China
doing
wa-
business with them, but they cut off the if things ever got heated, they just cut off the supply and would really be in a mess.
Yeah, so China wants to dominate certain industries, so that they dominate iron phosphate batteries, they dominate solar panels, they dominate now the cheap EVs. They dominate magnets. Rare earth. So they're not messed around. They're going to use their leverage.
Yeah. Your point, though, that this next stage of the AI boom is going to be about producing those basic materials we need to make it all possible here at home. So your presentation's on the 22nd of July. We'll put some details below this video so that everybody watching this will know how to join. I will be joining myself, and I highly recommend everybody else does. This is very near and dear to me. I've been writing about rare earths myself. I think this is one of the best opportunities we're going to have in the second half of this decade. This broader trend of AI. This is a kind of a micro sub-trend of that I think really has some staying power.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate it, and it's well worth it. But yeah, we're going to be sufficient in more than just food and energy here soon. For our national defense and a lot of reasons, we want to basically make everything here in America.
Very good. Well, Louis, thanks for joining us, and to everybody watching, thank you as well. To Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Wealth, Charles Sizemore, signing off.